This is just the faceplate with some scrap wood. This is the piece you've just turned. Flatten it out, or at least have the outside flat. Put thick CA on there. Put your accelerator here. That pin will set you right up, come down flat, wait 5 minutes, and now you can turn it. It's not going to move at all. I mean, it's not like a chuck. That puppy is solid. Now you can start doing thin wall if you want.
You know what I paid Don Geiger for a stainless steel piece to do it?
Well, this is free. This is going to hold. It's not going to move.
But how do you break the glue when you're doing that?
You just turn it away. You turn it back around and you just turn it away. You're just jam chucking it again.
Okay.
So I've got that piece. I'm going to jam chuck it. And in a drawer, where I save little chunks of wood because I'm going to use this. Here's a jam chuck that I would use on a thin wall. I just put it in. Now I always use just paper towels from the kitchen because they're always clean. I take 2 paper towels and I end up with 8 thicknesses, and I put that on, and I've never had a mark. Even though I've sanded the inside, the 600 or 400 grit, I've never had a mark. If you jam chuck that in. I've used other things and I've had marks. But if I get something like this is a piece that I don't know what I made out of it, but I just cut it off, but it's ready for a jam chuck. These little, I'm going to call them nipples, they fit right on here. So if I've got this in the tailstock and I need to jam chuck something, I've already got to sit. I don't need to make it. It's just in the drawer, and I just push it in there and do what I need to do and move on. And this piece of wood always saves your tailstock. And then throw it away when you're done. Now this one has a little bit of shoulder. Whenever you jam chuck things, you want to use that shoulder because that's going to stabilize things. This is just a piece of wood with a 1/2-inch hole because that's what fits on there. And a piece of foam rubber. So I can go back in against anything I want, jam chuck it, and I've got a live center. So it doesn't make any difference what I'm trying to do. If I was doing, pass that hollow form, any of them, that one. If I'm turning this and it's in the jaw and this starts flexing a little bit, I just put that jaw there and I'll jam chuck this lightly. You're not taking heavy cuts. And that'll hold that in. That little foam will protect your piece. You got it in the box. You don't need to worry about making something. It's just sitting there. Just go ahead and put it on there. I'll sell you one of these, Bob. And you'll buy it. But that trick with the glue, I mean, you can use white glue. You could use any glue you have, but make sure it's dry. Okay? And I haven't tried this with any big pieces because I haven't tried to do any real thin piece. But if you do a thin piece, is Ed and I found out before, if you're going to do a thin piece, you've got your piece of wood here, and it might be 1 inch thick or 1/2 inch thick, whatever you've got. You take about 1.5 inches, 2 inches, tops. You finish that to the level you want to finish it. You sand it to the level you want to finish it. And then you go into the next. Because if you take that whole thing out, it's going to start wobbling. I guarantee you, it's going to start wobbling. It's going to start singing to you. It's going to tell you, hey, I'm weak, and I'm going to move on.
Can you get a ripple finish?
Oh yeah.
But you got to sand it out.
Well, you may not be able to sand it out, but at minimum you'll have a ripple finish. So that's jam chucking, and I use them on the inside, I use them on the outside. It just makes me be able to cut things pretty fast. Even if I'm cutting the inside out and it's a big piece, I'll jam chuck this while I'm holding it here, and I'll just rip in, I'll just leave a little cone there, and I'll just cut that little cone out a little later. Because I know that piece isn't going to come off, and I know I can work it just about as hard as I want to work it. And if it's cedar or whatever, that piece of wood doesn't have much guts there. And I'll put on relatively thin dovetails, because I know that dovetail's not taking the brunt of the work. Other comments you want to make on that, Bob?
No, I have some other options.
All right. We talked a little bit about face plates. You can get, where this is a 1/8, mine is a 1/8. You can thread wood. I don't have it threaded to 1/8. These are threaded to 3/4 10, I think. They fit the Supernova, or not, the one-way live center valve or something. So this is basically a jam chuck, but they're made for whatever I want to do, and they sit on the live center. And they're just scrap wood, so they're free.
If you don't have a thread cutting system, what you can do is, these come with that little steel rod you saw me put through there a while ago and lock it. Back to better show. You didn't bring yours down.
What's that? Yeah. I'd like it back.
This is. But if you don't have a thread cutting system, you can take that and drill the right size hole and lock it with this pin, and you can sort of force cut the threads this way. Because this thing isn't going to take any real pressure because it's in compression. So you don't need to have this be a Loctite fitting. All right? As long as it has just enough to thread in there, the main thing is to get inside the hole so this piece doesn't wobble. So don't worry about going out and buying the thread chasing kit. You don't need to do that.
Mine is a little bent because I was a little rough with it. Let's see where we are on the slides here. We talked about the 4-prong. We talked about the step centers. I just have my drill chuck there. Go ahead, let's go to the next one. These I showed. If you want, anybody want these passed around? I mean, they're just nothing. All right, go ahead. All right, now we're getting to the vacuum chuck that I have, which is sort of self-made. Bones called me about the internet, and you could buy a kit on the internet that you can make some of the parts for the vacuum chuck. It's about $40. And then I bought a Harbor Freight vacuum pump for $80, and I'm up and running, and I'm happy with it.
Huh.
It does a real nice job. Now you need, let's go back one. Let's go back another. Well, I'm sorry, forward. I guess I got a few. You get this vacuum line, you get the gauge. I mounted it on the wall because that's easier for me. And there's a bunch of tubing that goes out the front of my lathe. Let's keep going down until we get a little further. Keep going down. Keep going down. All right, there we go. Here's the vacuum system. Here's my tubing. And I've just got a bolt there that goes into the end of the tubing. One more down. This is the outside of my headstock. And they gave you a plastic board, but I just used a piece of wood. And they've got a sealed bearing, and then you just connect it with washers. You have to have a solid headstock, because your headstock pipe is really what's sending that vacuum forward. So if you have an indexing thing that has holes through your headstock, then you're going to have a problem.
Well, it's got to be hollow but continuous with,
I'm sorry.
with no cross holes in it.
Correct. Then my vacuum tube just hooks onto there. Let's keep going with it. And this is the vacuum chuck, which is just PVC pipe. And it does a wonderful job on vacuum chucking. Now you need something to center it in the back. This just screws on. I always check my vacuum, particularly if it's bad. And this, I vacuum chuck with those holes. But what I did was I wrapped it with this packaging tape. Probably about 2 layers. And then I tried it for a while, and it held, and I said, okay, I'm gonna go do it. But when I did it, I had this spot in the back, so I jammed that thing forward lightly, and I took it down to almost nothing. And then I backed off the tailstock, did the rest, and then sanded the foot.
What I don't understand is you have the bigger one that you use, whatever that one's called, okay, and then you also have your vacuum chuck. When do you make the decision which is the best to be used on a particular, I mean, I bought those big jobs, all right, didn't have much success, but on a vacuum chuck, you know, that works fine. But when do you make the decision as to whether you want to use the big one or if you want to use a vacuum?
The easiest way, well, first way is whichever's got the least amount of shavings piled up around it, in my studio. If you have porous wood or thin wood, you don't want to use a vacuum because it'll crack it too much suction. So you'd use the cold jaws or the lawnmower.
Okay.
If you've got rough wood that you can't get suction air,
Oh,
you have to use something else. Now, probably you wouldn't use the cold jaws. If you're rough, you're probably not perfectly round either, in which case you use a jam chuck, and I'll show you some other things on it. Vacuum chucking is great to finish off the bottom when you have a piece ready to be done, and it's not too thin.
and isn't that basically what you're doing with those bigger jaws? I mean, you're not using them with a lot of pressure and all that also, are you?
And again, it depends. It depends on the wood.
Uh-huh.
If you put too much pressure, the wood will want to flex like this,
Okay.
and it can crack it, or it can pop out. If you're doing a big platter, or even one of these things like
No,
that.
I'm talking about the pressure of the
Yeah.
actual work you're doing on the back. You're doing
Oh, I'm sorry.
minimal work, right, on the back?
Well, no, I mean, I could have done this whole thing. Once I turned it around, I could have put this in the cold jaws and turned this whole bottom from square to round. You just have to know what you're doing, sure.
Oh, wow.
You have to have the right touch. It's slower. I wouldn't do that.
I
I'd do some
realize
other
that.
method, but you certainly could.
Oh, you could,
Almost,
okay.
almost. You can't get to where the buttons are.
Right.
Oh, but still.
But I mean,
Unless you,
you can do this, just put a 10 on the bottom and still have this square. You can put a 10 or a recess and turn all this, and then turn around and put that in the buttons, if you have the right touch.
Okay.
If you don't, put some tape around it, put a vacuum chuck, you go to a jam chuck, I mean, any of these methods, and you just kind of have to try the different ones, and eventually you get to where you say, well, I obviously want to try this, or just automatically do what you're most comfortable with.
both the vacuum chuck and the cold jaws are not strong holding
That's
devices.
what's.
Neither one is.
Right.
And I always use a jam to hold things in the beginning, and then the last part is the only thing I'm really looking at, and I'm just taking a very light cut.
The
Yes.
vacuum chuck is stronger than you would give it credit for if you have a good smooth finish and non-porous wood. I could take this bowl right here and put it on my vacuum chuck, and I don't think I could knock it off. All right, because it's got so much atmospheric pressure pushing against it that I don't know that I can knock this off without breaking the wood. But sometimes if you get the wrong pressure this way, it'll slide a little bit. Right? So just like Chuck says, I start out with the live center, the tailstock up against it until I know everything's good and clear and done, do all my rough shaping on the outside, and then I take it away for safety.
The pressure generated with a vacuum chuck varies according to the size of the chuck, and it varies exponentially. If you use a chuck that's twice as big, you don't get twice as much pressure. It's exponentially bigger, the amount of pressure.
Well, it's the surface area is basically.
That would be a huge amount of pressure.
That's the only vacuum chuck I've got. I've got the parts to make bigger ones and smaller ones, so that's the one I use all the time.
Mhm. All my pieces would fit in there. Yes?
Yeah, you can improve the performance of a cold jaws by either buying the Vic Mark buttons or making your own buttons out of high-density polyethylene, which they sell over here. And the Vic Mark buttons are, two sides are on an angle, and the other two sides, and curve in, and the other two sides are on an angle and curve out. So you got two sides that are on an angle concave, two sides on an angle convex. So depending on what you're doing, I mean, that's the way I did this one. You've got buttons with an angle, and I cold draw this one inside in an expansion mode. And since the buttons were on an angle, they locked in here, and there was no way that it was coming off. And by using those Vic Mark buttons, and a couple of sets that I made out of high-density polyethylene, I haven't had a piece come off of a cold draw in years.
You can also buy these that stack. So you put, if you have a thicker rim and a flat rim, for example, you can stack two of these. A lot of finagling, a lot of jury rigging to do, but you can. Or you can use one of the other methods. Or you put it on there and put tape across it. For sale.
One thing I should mention is, this was out of a DVD with Lyle Jameson, so it's nothing that I invented, somebody else did. I use it, it's good. Bob, maybe you want to talk about some of your other mounting techniques, because I've sort of exhausted what I use on a daily basis.
I want to keep bending over, so I'm going to make myself a little bit.
Or we can just throw them in the box. Unless you want one of these high performance chucks here.
See, I use this so much, looking for the stuff that flies off the lathe until my shaving battery's dead. One of my most used tools. Don't put it too far, I'm probably going to use it. All right, it's 8:30, so I'm going to go through the stuff I got in my box really quick. Paper towel, like Chuck was saying. Very quick, very easy. Lock your lathe down. But here's one of the easiest ways to hold something in place. Just for a quick turn, if you don't have a really delicate finish, make sure you got enough wads. But I use the paper towel technique all the time. I started out cutting foam rubber pads and all that crap because I read it in a book somewhere, and then I saw a British guy, I forget who it was, to do this. So
Paper towels are better.
yeah, it worked great. So that's part of the chucking device right there. All right, I also use the stretch wrap. Now, the one advisable thing is wrap this in the right direction so that as this thing flaps around like this, because my lathe is turning towards me, as this comes around, that's going to have a tendency to blow that edge up. If I do it like this, it'll have a tendency to just keep wrapping itself back around. So always put this on in the right direction. Same thing with tape. If you put tape on something as it's spinning, wrap your tape in the direction of the rotation so that the raw edge doesn't get caught in the wind, because it'll unwrap itself in a heartbeat. And ding, you need your flashlight. All right. Here's another chuck that I've been using for a bunch of years, and it keeps getting shorter and shorter, but it'll hold stuff up to that diameter, and I can true it up every time. So I use this a lot. I just put that in my scroll chuck and do it like that. And it probably, because I turn very lightly, I can do that. It probably will not make a mark on here. If I got a little tiny hole, it only goes in that far. Got a bigger hole, it can shoulder out up here. If it's bigger than that, I have other stuff. I also make, the plugs. I had this one I use as a glue chuck. I had some really precious African blackwood, so you see a little piece left. And I also saved it to use for a jam chuck. That could be a glue chuck, a tape chuck, and I'll show you an example in a minute. So could that. So like you said, you just save these little scraps of wood. This is what I make Christmas ornaments out of. Very soft wood, so it will not, if I were to taper it for this. Or I can make it a tight fit so that it'll hold it. I could actually, if I did this correctly, put that in my scroll chuck, make that fit tight enough that it sort of snaps in. I don't have anything down here. Now it's holding it in place.